I was transmigrated into the three kingdoms. But unlike everyone else who rushed to pledge loyalty to Cao Cao or Liu Bei, I ended up proclaiming myself king from a ruined temple. And on my very first night, I married Diao Chan. It all began because after arriving in this world, I was nothing more than a lowly stable slave in Dongchuo's mansion, just in time to witness the old fox Wang Yun carrying out his infamous beauty trap, planning to send Diao Chan to Dongchuo as bait. But before the carriage even reached the rear courtyard, a group of men dressed in black suddenly charged out with daggers in hand. The moment I saw the breathtaking beauty sitting inside the carriage, one thought flashed through my mind. Even if I died beneath the peony flower, it would still be worth it. In the middle of the chaos, I seized the chance, grabbed Diao Chan, and escaped all the way to a ruined temple outside Luoyang. I never expected that the moment she arrived, she collapsed onto the ground. Only then did I notice that her right ankle was swollen bright red. As I gently reached out to treat her injury, a cold mechanical voice suddenly echoed inside my head. Detected peerless beauty Diao Chan. Conditions for system activation fulfilled. Beauty companion system successfully bound. Congratulations, host. You have received the beginner's gift pack, fusing the strength of Xiangyu, the overlord of Western Chu. Congratulations, host. Initial reward granted. The 18 Yanyun riders are awaiting your command outside the temple. In the next instant, an overwhelming surge of heat exploded from my dantian and spread through every inch of my body. My bones cracked loudly, my muscles swelled as if filled with air, and my once frail body became packed with explosive strength. I clenched my fists and felt as though I could kill a bull with a single punch. Even the whip scars that had tormented me for so long completely healed within seconds. What's wrong with you? Diao Chan asked nervously, shrinking back as she noticed how terrifying my gaze had suddenly become. Just then, a storm of galloping horses echoed from outside the temple. Search every corner. That slave couldn't have escaped far with Miss Diao Chan. It was Liu San, the stable manager. I never thought that fat bastard would actually catch up so quickly. I turned toward Diao Chan and said in a commanding voice, "Stay here, don't make a sound." Then I strode out of the ruined temple. Beneath the moonlight, Liu San had surrounded the temple with more than 20 Xiliang soldiers holding blazing torches. He sneered at me and shouted, "Chen Xuan, you've got some nerve. How dare a worthless slave touch something that belongs to the Chancellor? Hand Miss Diao Chan over now and I'll leave your corpse intact." The surrounding soldiers burst into laughter. In their eyes, I was nothing more than an ant they could crush whenever they pleased. But as I stared at Liu San, years of bottled up rage erupted inside me. My hands shot forward like lightning, grabbing two soldiers by the neck. Crack, crack! Before either of them could even scream, I snapped their necks with my bare hands and tossed their lifeless bodies aside like sacks of garbage. Liu San's grin instantly froze, and his eyes nearly popped out of their sockets. That's impossible. I casually threw the corpses aside and looked at him with eyes as cold as ice. The power of the Overlord truly lived up to its legend. These ordinary soldiers moved so slowly that they looked like snails in my eyes. "Kill him! All of you attack together!" Liu San screamed hysterically. The remaining soldiers exchanged glances before charging at me with furious roars. But just as I was about to unleash a massacre, synchronized hoofbeats suddenly echoed from the darkness outside the temple. Thud, thud, thud. Every step felt as though it stomped directly onto people's hearts. 18 dark figures emerged from the forest like ghosts, clad entirely in black armor, wearing terrifying masks, and wielding crescent-shaped sabers. They knelt before me. The 18 Yanyun riders greet our lord. Their leader's hoarse voice carried endless killing intent. Before Liu San could even react, the 18 riders had already swept into the enemy ranks. It wasn't a battle. It was pure slaughter. Every slash of their blades was followed by another head flying into the air. The Xiliang soldiers' proud armor tore apart like paper before these grim reapers. In less than 30 seconds, every Xiliang soldier lay dead except Liu San. He tumbled from his horse, soaked his pants in terror, and crawled backward while begging, "Please spare me, Chen Xuan. Master Chen, I was wrong." I walked over and looked down at him coldly. "Weren't you just saying you wanted to skin me alive?" I stepped on his chest, and with only a little pressure, the sound of breaking ribs echoed through the night. I didn't mean it. I was only joking," he cried, his face twisted with pain. I didn't waste another word. I snatched the whip from his hand and lashed it across his face with the strength of the Overlord. Half of his face exploded into a bloody mess. That one was for the original owner of this body. Then I swung again. "And this one is my reward to you." Liu San twitched twice before breathing his last. I tossed the whip aside without sparing his corpse another glance and walked back into the ruined temple. Diao Chan was curled up in the corner. After witnessing the massacre outside and seeing those terrifying black-clad warriors obey me without question, admiration and love naturally began filling her heart. She suddenly realized that the man standing before her was unimaginably powerful. I walked over, crouched down, gazed into her peerless face, and lifted her effortlessly into my arms. She let out a startled cry and instinctively struggled, but my embrace felt as solid as iron pillars, giving her a sense of safety she had never experienced before. Her mind went completely blank, and under my domineering gaze, she found herself unable to resist at all. Ding! Diao Chan's heart has been deeply shaken. Affection increased to 50. Congratulations, host! Special achievement completed. Winning Diao Chan's heart. Reward 3000 Snow Dragon Cavalry. Reward Divine Commander Chen Qingji. As the system's voice faded away, the open ground outside the temple began to distort violently. An icy chill swept across the land, followed by deafening hoofbeats. Carrying Diaochan in my arms, I stepped outside and saw 3000 cavalrymen clad in silver-white heavy armor, mounted upon white warhorses appearing out of thin air beneath the moonlight. They stood silently in perfect formation, their murderous aura soaring into the heavens like an army of frost returned from hell itself. A refined-looking general dismounted, knelt before me on one knee and declared, "Your subordinate, Chen Qingji, greets my lord." At the same moment, all 3000 Snow Dragon riders drew their swords together, their voices shaking the earth. "We greet our lord." Diao Chan was completely stunned. Although she knew nothing about military strategy, even she could tell how terrifying this cavalry was. This was far beyond the power any stable slave could ever possess. Looking at this invincible army before me, I threw back my head and let out a triumphant roar. Chen Qingji rose to his feet and asked, "My lord, where shall we go next?" Though he looked like a gentle scholar, I knew this man was one of the most feared generals in history. I carefully helped Diao Chan onto one of the white horses he had prepared before mounting my own steed. I looked back toward Luo Yang, a ruthless smile appearing on my face. "We're going back." Diao Chan gasped and whispered anxiously, "Husband, Luo Yang is completely occupied by the Siliang army. Won't we be walking straight into a trap?" I looked at her worried expression, reached out, gently pinched her cheek and smiled. "Don't worry, no one in this world can stop me." In my heart, I was thinking about the stable slaves I had left behind. They might have been timid, but according to the memories of this body, they were the only people who had ever shown me kindness. Now that I had an army, there was no way I could leave them there to die. Besides, the food supplies and military equipment inside Luoyang were resources I absolutely needed to build my own power. "Move!" I waved my hand, and the 3000 Snow Dragon riders instantly surged forward. Like a silver flood beneath the moonlight, they raced across the land with astonishing speed. Thanks to their supernatural ability to leave no trace in the snow, their charge was almost silent. Yet the overwhelming pressure they exuded was enough to suffocate anyone. At the rear gate of Luoyang, the guards were half asleep when the ground suddenly began trembling beneath their feet. "What's that sound?" one soldier muttered while rubbing his eyes. Before he could see clearly, a silver flash had already reached him. The 18 Yanyun riders took the lead, leaping onto the city walls like 18 black bolts of lightning. Agonized screams instantly erupted everywhere. I led the Snow Dragon riders directly behind them. "Open the gates!" I roared. The iron shovel I once carried had long since been replaced by a spear taken from a Siliang soldier. With one casual swing, the spear unleashed a violent gust that shattered the massive gate bar into pieces. Boom! The city gates flew open, and all 3000 cavalrymen thundered straight into Luoyang. At that moment, the city was still in chaos from the earlier assassin attack, and soldiers were searching every street. The instant they saw our silver-armored cavalry, every one of them froze in disbelief. Where did this army come from? "Hurry! Report to the Chancellor!" I ignored those insignificant soldiers completely and rode straight toward the stables behind the Chancellor's residence. Inside, dozens of stable slaves were huddled together in fear. Liu San still hadn't returned, and they all sensed that something terrible had happened. Brother Chen must have been killed. Of course he's dead. Nobody survives after touching something that belongs to the Chancellor. But before they could say another word, the stable wall exploded inward. Riding a magnificent war horse and surrounded by countless silver-armored cavalrymen, I appeared before them. Looking at my dumbfounded brothers, I raised my voice and shouted, "Brothers, I'm back! Do you want to live? Do you want to eat meat? The stable slaves stared at me, then looked at the terrifying cavalry standing silently behind me, completely unable to believe the scene unfolding before their eyes. One after another, the stable slaves stared at me with their eyes so wide they looked ready to pop out. Brother Chen, did you become some high-ranking official? One of them asked in disbelief. I waved my hand impatiently. Enough nonsense. If you want to live, come with me. If not, stay here and wait to die. The Snow Dragon cavalry immediately charged into the stables, cutting down every overseer and supervisor before they even realized what was happening. Dozens of stable slaves scrambled out in panic. Looking at these ragged, exhausted men, I couldn't help sighing to myself. These people would become the very first foundation of my future kingdom. At that moment, Chen Qingji lowered his voice and reminded me, "My lord, the Xiliang army is on the move." I looked toward the center of Luoyang and saw countless torches gathering into a blazing river of fire, surging straight toward us. Dongchuo's elite Xiliang cavalry had finally arrived. A cold smile appeared on my face. Good. This is the perfect chance to test the true strength of the Snow Dragon cavalry. On the streets of Luoyang, 5,000 Xiliang cavalry thundered toward us under the command of the fierce general Hua Xiong. He was already furious. In the middle of the night, someone had not only caused chaos inside Luoyang, but had even stolen the woman Dong Chuo coveted. Raising his massive blade, Hua Xiong roared, "Rebels ahead! Throw down your weapons, and I'll spare your lives!" I looked at him from afar and couldn't help thinking, so this is the unlucky man Guan Yu would later kill before his wine even cooled. He certainly looked intimidating enough. Without changing my expression, I calmly said, "Qingji, I'll leave him to you." Chen Qingji nodded slightly, pointed his sword forward, and the Snow Dragon cavalry charged. 3,000 silver-armored riders moved in perfect silence. There were no battle cries, only synchronized hoofbeats and the grinding sound of armor. The two cavalry forces slammed into each other with earth-shaking force. Hua Xiong had assumed this mysterious army would collapse the instant they met the Xiliang cavalry. But the moment the battle began, his soul nearly left his body. The Snow Dragon cavalry's impact was absolutely terrifying. The proud Xiliang war horses trembled before the white steeds as if they were frightened lambs. Their heavy armor protected even the horses' eyes, making them completely fearless against blades and arrows. Silver spears flashed endlessly through the battlefield, and every thrust pierced multiple Xiliang soldiers. Hua Xiong watched helplessly as his vanguard fell like wheat before a scythe. "Impossible! What kind of soldiers are these?" he roared before swinging his blade at one Snow Dragon rider. Sparks exploded on impact, yet the soldier didn't even flinch. Instead, he countered with one spear thrust that nearly pierced Hua Xiong's shoulder clean through. Hua Xiong's face turned pale with terror. He realized every single one of these soldiers possessed strength comparable to a second-rate general. "Retreat! Retreat now!" he shouted as he turned his horse and fled without another thought. I had no intention of chasing him. My goal wasn't to kill Hua Xiong, it was to break out of the city. Like an unstoppable flood, the 3,000 Snow Dragon riders smashed straight through the Xiliang encirclement and galloped toward Luoyang's eastern gate. At the same time, inside a tavern overlooking the eastern district, a man with narrow eyes and a long beard stood silently by the window, holding a wine cup. It was Cao Cao. He had originally planned to use the confusion as an opportunity to assassinate Dongzhuo, but instead he witnessed a scene that left him completely stunned. His voice trembled as he looked at the battlefield. "Wenruo, look at that cavalry. 3,000 men are crushing 5,000 Xiliang cavalry. Who is that young commander?" Standing behind him, Chunyu frowned deeply. "My lord, I have never seen this man before. Judging by their armor and weapons, they are certainly not Han troops. Could they belong to some powerful hidden clan?" Cao Cao kept his eyes fixed on my disappearing figure and slowly said, "Whoever he is, the world is about to change. A stable slave commanding such divine soldiers. If this man isn't eliminated, he will become the greatest threat under heaven." I had no idea Cao Cao was watching me. After breaking through the eastern gate, I led my army into the endless night. We marched until dawn, finally stopping in a forest surrounded by mountains and rivers. The former stable slaves were exhausted, but every one of them had excitement burning in their eyes. One of them, Da Zhuang, walked over and asked, "Brother Chen, where are we heading now?" I took a drink of water while studying the map. "We have soldiers and generals now, but we still lack food and territory." I pointed toward Chen Liu. "We'll head there first. The wealthy families there have plenty of grain." Deep down, I couldn't stop smiling. With the system in my hands, every peerless beauty I recruited would grant me even stronger troops. And in the three kingdoms, beautiful women were everywhere. As long as I kept growing stronger, every one of them could eventually stand by my side. While I was thinking, one of the 18 Yunyan riders returned at full speed. My lord, 5 li ahead, we found a convoy bearing the banner of the Wei family from Hedong. My eyebrows rose immediately. The Wei family, Wei Chongdao. A familiar name instantly surfaced in my memory, Chai Yan, later known as Chai Wenji. If I remembered correctly, this was exactly when she was being escorted to marry Wei Chongdao. She was one of the greatest talents of the three kingdoms. I stood up with a grin spreading across my face. Brothers, we've got work to do. Beside me, Diao Chan looked at my expression curiously. What are you planning? I mounted my horse confidently and answered, I'm going to find you a companion. 5 li away, a lavish wedding procession slowly advanced along the official road. The carriage in the center was even more luxurious than the one Diao Chan had ridden in. Wei Zhongdao sat atop his horse with an unusually pale complexion, coughing every few moments. He looked every bit the refined young master of a noble family, but he also looked terribly sickly. Suddenly, the earth began to shake beneath their feet. The shining silver armor of the snow dragon cavalry reflected brilliantly under the morning sun as we blocked the road. The Wei family's servants panicked, throwing away their musical instruments. Wei Zhongdao forced himself to shout, "Who are you bandits? How dare you block the carriage of the Wei family?" Riding my white horse forward with my spear resting in my hand, I looked at him calmly. "I'm not a bandit, I'm Chen Xuan." I pointed directly at the luxurious carriage. "Leave the woman inside and the rest of you may leave." Wei Zhongdao nearly coughed up blood from anger. "Bastard! The woman inside is my fiancée, Chai Yan, daughter of Chai Yong. How dare you!" Before he could finish speaking, I waved my hand. The 18 Yanyun riders instantly appeared around him, their crescent blades resting against his neck. My voice turned ice cold. "Say one more word and I'll send you to meet your ancestors right now." Wei Zhongdao trembled so violently that he couldn't force out another sentence. I dismounted, walked to the carriage, and slowly lifted the curtain. Inside sat a breathtakingly beautiful young woman with a calm, elegant temperament. She held a book in her hands, and despite the chaos outside, there wasn't much fear in her eyes. Instead, she carried a peaceful expression, as though she had already accepted whatever fate awaited her. "So, you're Kai Yan?" She gently closed her book, looked at me, and said in a voice as clear as jade, "General, if you came only for beauty, why bother asking my name?" I laughed softly. This woman was interesting. "I'm not here seeking beauty," I replied. "I'm here seeking talent." She silently looked at my rough, calloused hand for a long moment. She knew Wei Zhongdao was a sickly man and that marrying him would likely leave her widowed before long. The man before her was overbearing, but he also possessed an irresistible aura, unlike anything she had ever encountered. Slowly, she reached out her hand. At that instant, the system chimed again. "Detected peerless beauty Chayan. Affection increased to 30. Congratulations, host. New troop pool unlocked. Divine Ming Shenji Battalion. Congratulations. Reward granted. 3,000 Shenji Battalion Musketeers." My heart nearly exploded with excitement. Musketeers! In an era dominated by cold weapons, firearms were nothing less than dimensional warfare. Wei Zhongdao could only watch helplessly as I helped Kai Yan out of the carriage. He wanted to shout, but with a blade pressed against his neck, he barely dared to breathe. Finally, he stammered, "Chen Xuan, you dare steal my bride. Kai Yong will never forgive you." I glanced back at him as though he were already a dead man. If Kai Yong knew his daughter would become the wife of a useless cripple like you and end up a widow within a year, he'd probably thank me instead. I waved my hand dismissively. "Go. I'm sparing your life. Return and spread the news. Tell every noble family under heaven that Chen Xuan has arrived." Wei Zhongdao fled in humiliation with what remained of his escort. Turning around, I noticed Chai Yan curiously observing the silver-armored cavalry surrounding us. She asked softly, "General, these soldiers don't seem like men of the Central Plains." I smiled faintly. "Because they are heavenly soldiers." Back at the camp, Diao Chan froze the moment she saw Chai Yan, and Kai Yan was equally surprised. "Sister Diao Chan, Wenji?" Before long, the two peerless beauties were chatting quietly together as though they had known each other forever. Watching them, I couldn't stop smiling to myself. Two beauties already? The system's growth speed was about to become unbelievable. I quickly checked the system again. The 3,000 Shenji Battalion Musketeers had already been added and could be summoned at any moment. Just then, Chen Qingji approached and reported, "My lord, there's a small county ahead called Pingqiu. Its defenses are weak. It would make a suitable temporary base." I nodded without hesitation. "Good. Inform everyone to prepare for the siege. It was time to test the power of the Shenji battalion. Before long, our army arrived beneath Pingqiu's walls. The county magistrate looked down at the sudden appearance of the silver-armored cavalry outside the city and nearly collapsed in fear. Close the gates! Fire the arrows! A few scattered arrows rained down from the walls, but they couldn't even scratch the snow dragon cavalry. I smiled coldly and raised my hand. Instantly, 3,000 Shenji battalion musketeers materialized out of thin air. Wearing crimson robes and carrying dark, heavy muskets, they stood in perfect formation. The magistrate stared blankly. What are those things they're holding? Firewood? I slowly drew my spear and pointed it forward. Fire! A deafening barrage erupted like rolling thunder. The defenders had never witnessed anything like it. Smoke engulfed the walls, and when it cleared, the soldiers atop the battlements fell one after another like harvested wheat. Even the sturdy bricks of the city walls shattered into countless fragments. The magistrate fainted on the spot. Is the god of thunder descending from heaven? Less than 10 minutes later, the gates of Pingqiu swung wide open, and I rode triumphantly into the city. Meanwhile, back in Dongzhuo's chancellor's residence in Luoyang, Dongzhuo violently overturned the banquet table before him, his fat face trembling with rage. Trash! You're all worthless trash! He glared at the kneeling Huaxiong and kicked him hard. 3,000 cavalry rode through Luoyang, stole Diaochan, and slaughtered thousands of my Xiliang soldiers. Huaxiong, do you no longer value your head? Covered in cold sweat, Huaxiong repeatedly begged for mercy. Please calm your anger, Chancellor. That cavalry was simply too strange. They wore impenetrable heavy armor, ignored blades and arrows, and moved with incredible speed. I truly couldn't stop them. Dongzhuo breathed heavily before growling, Chen Xuan, that stable slave. He turned toward Li Ru beside him. Wen Yu, what do you think? Li Ru slowly waved his feather fan and replied with a grim expression. Chancellor, this man's origins are unknown, yet he commands such elite troops. That alone proves he is anything but ordinary. More importantly, he disrupted Wang Yun's beauty trap before it even unfolded. That means he already saw through our entire plan. At that moment, Wang Yun hurried into the hall with an anxious expression. Chancellor, terrible news. He looked utterly heartbroken. This old minister has just learned that my adopted daughter Diao Chan has been abducted by that rebel. Dongzhuo snorted coldly. Minister Wang, the beauty you offered me disappeared before she even entered my residence. You'll have to explain this. Wang Yun felt like coughing up blood. He had spent years grooming Diao Chan as the perfect chess piece to drive a wedge between Dongzhuo and Lu Bu, only for everything to be ruined. What hurt even more was hearing that I had already married Diao Chan inside that ruined temple. His years of planning had completely gone to waste. Grinding his teeth, Wang Yun added, Chancellor, that thief didn't just steal Diao Chan. On the way, he also abducted Chai Yan from the Wei family of Hedong. That man is utterly consumed by lust, and now he commands a powerful army. If we don't eliminate him immediately, he'll become an enormous threat. Dongzhuo slammed his palm onto the table and roared, Send the order to Lu Bu. Take 30,000 Bingzhou cavalry and tear that bastard into pieces. At the very same time, elsewhere in Luoyang, Yuan Shao, Yuan Shu, and the other warlords also received news of everything that had happened. The news that a mere stable slave had stolen Diao Chan, abducted Chai Yan, and fought his way out of Luoyang spread across the land as if it had grown wings. Everyone's first reaction was the same. How could that possibly be? But when reports arrived that Pingqiu had fallen and a mysterious new army called the Shenji Battalion had appeared, the warlords could no longer sit still. Inside Pingqiu city, I sat in the county office and calmly gave orders. Dazhuang, take some men and seal the city's granaries. Distribute grain to the people according to their households. Yes, brother Chen. Now dressed in brand new leather armor, Dazhuang walked away with confidence. Ergu, take some men and post notices everywhere. Starting today, Pingqiu will no longer collect the head tax. If anyone dares bully the common people, I'll personally cut off his head. Understood. Watching these former stable slaves carrying out my commands filled me with reassurance. They might not have been educated, but there wasn't a single person more loyal to me than them. Chen Qingji entered and reported, My lord, our food supplies can last about 3 months, but Pingqiu is too small to properly train the army. I nodded calmly. There's no rush. Right now, what we need most is our reputation. Turning around, I saw Diao Chan and Chai Yan walking out from the inner hall together. Smiling warmly, I asked, Are my two ladies getting used to living here? Kaiyan looked around the busy county office before saying thoughtfully, General, are you truly planning to turn Pingqiu into a paradise? I stood by the window, looking out at the cheering townspeople filling the street. A paradise is far too small. I want every common person under heaven to have enough food to eat. Then I turned toward her. Wenji, your talent is extraordinary. From now on, Pingqiu's administration and academy will be entrusted to you. What do you think? Chai Yun froze in disbelief. In this era, women were forbidden from taking part in government affairs. General, are you truly serious? I wrapped an arm around her shoulders with absolute confidence. With me, nothing is impossible. At that very moment, the familiar mechanical voice echoed inside my mind. Ding! Chayan's affection has increased to 60. Congratulations, host. Reward, high-yield potato seeds. Reward, 10,000 Weiwu infantry. I nearly laughed out loud. Potatoes were the ultimate weapon against famine, and the Weiwu infantry were among the strongest heavy infantry ever seen during the Warring States era. With these new troops, my forces were finally powerful enough to challenge a minor warlord head-on. Before I could celebrate further, hurried footsteps echoed from outside. Report, my lord. A massive cavalry force has appeared outside the city. Their banner bears the character Lu. My eyes instantly turned cold as I gripped my spear. Perfect timing. I'll use the strongest warrior of the three kingdoms to dedicate my army's first great victory. Outside Pingqiu, yellow sand filled the sky as 30,000 Bingzhou cavalry stretched across the horizon like dark storm clouds. Their momentum alone was overwhelming. At the front stood Lu Bu, atop his legendary red hair horse, gripping his sky-piercer halberd. His handsome face was filled with nothing but contempt. Which one of you is Chen Xuan? Get out here and die! His voice, amplified by his powerful inner strength, echoed throughout the entire city. In his mind, Dongzhou had been making a mountain out of a molehill. Why send 30,000 elite cavalry to deal with nothing more than a former stable slave? The city gates slowly opened, and I rode out on my white horse alongside the Snow Dragon cavalry and the Shenji battalion. Lu Bu's eyes narrowed slightly as he looked over my silver-armored troops. Interesting, you've got some decent soldiers, but in front of me, there's still nothing. Looking down at me arrogantly, he asked, So you're Chen Xuan? I heard you stole Diao Chan. I smiled casually. Lu Bu, Diao Chan is my wife now. If you surrender immediately, I might even reward you with a bowl of wine. You're courting death! Lu Bu exploded with rage. He dug his heels into Red Hair's sides, and horse and rider became a crimson streak charging toward me. His halberd tore through the air with terrifying force, as though it could split the heavens apart. I remained completely calm and raised my hand. Shenji Battalion, prepare! 3,000 musketeers immediately stepped forward and formed 3 firing lines. Although Lu Bu had never seen firearms before, his instincts screamed that those strange black weapons were incredibly dangerous. Fire! Flames burst from the muzzles as an overwhelming storm of bullets instantly covered Lu Bu's charge. His reactions were astonishingly fast. The sky-piercer halberd spun into an impenetrable wall, deflecting most of the bullets, but the Bingzhou cavalry behind him had no such ability. Blood sprayed everywhere as the front ranks of riders and horses were torn apart into riddled corpses. Even Red Hair, startled by the deafening explosions, let out a frightened neigh and instinctively refused to advance. Lu Bu finally halted and stared at the shattered bodies scattered across the battlefield. For the first time, genuine fear appeared in his eyes. What kind of sorcery is this? I sneered and pointed my spear forward. Snow Dragon cavalry, Weiwu infantry, full assault. In the next instant, 10,000 heavily armored Weiwu infantry appeared out of nowhere. Holding massive tower shields and long spears, they advanced alongside the 3,000 Snow Dragon riders like an unstoppable meat grinder, crashing directly into the Bingzhou cavalry. Lu Bu's mind went completely blank as he watched elite soldiers suddenly materialize across the battlefield. The battle had barely begun, yet his proud cavalry was already being massacred. As I calmly watched everything unfold, another thought crossed my mind. If I captured Lu Bu alive, would the system reward me with something even greater? The smoke from the muskets still lingered over Pingqiu's plains as Lu Bu stood frozen in disbelief. He lowered his eyes to his halberd before looking at the corpses lying ahead. Horses and riders alike were covered with enormous bloody holes, their bodies torn apart so completely that many couldn't even be recognized. Just moments ago, he had clearly seen my red-clad soldiers carrying nothing but strange black iron tubes. tubes, a flash of fire, a clap like thunder, and his elite cavalry had fallen in droves. What in the world are those things, he wondered. After countless battles across the north and south, he had never witnessed such a horrifying way of killing. He pulled hard on Red Hair's reins, but the fearless warhorse kept snorting anxiously, its legs trembling as it stubbornly refused to charge again. Sitting calmly atop my horse, I shouted loudly, "Lubu, aren't you supposed to be the greatest warrior under heaven? Why did you stop? Come kill me if you can." His face turned bright red with humiliation. Back in Bingzhou, everyone respectfully addressed him as General Lu. Now a former stable slave was openly mocking him. Grinding his teeth, he roared, "Rebels, stop relying on your evil tricks. Bingzhou cavalry, charge! Trample every one of those men in red into the ground." The remaining cavalry were terrified, but Lubu's reputation forced them to obey as they charged forward anyway. I smiled coldly. I knew the Shenji battalion's greatest weakness was allowing cavalry to get too close. Fortunately, musketeers weren't my only weapon. "Shenji battalion, fall back! Weiwu infantry, forward!" I gave the order. 10,000 Weiwu soldiers advanced in perfect formation, raising towering shields, while rows of long spears extended through narrow gaps, transforming the entire army into a gigantic wall of steel spikes. The Bingzhou cavalry slammed into the shield formation with heavy crashes. Horses were impaled on the spears, while riders were smashed backward by the massive shields. Watching the slaughter unfold, Lubu's heart ached. These were the veteran soldiers he had built over countless battles. He charged directly toward a Weiwu soldier and swung his halberd with all his might. The impact rang like a giant bell, yet the infantryman merely staggered back a few steps, leaving nothing but a white mark on his shield. Lubu's heart filled with shock. What are these infantry made of? How can they possess such unbelievable strength? During the brief moment he hesitated, Chen Qingji led 3,000 snow dragon riders around the flank. Like a silver hurricane, they sliced directly into the heart of the Bingzhou cavalry. Their horses were swift, their blades even faster. Everywhere they passed, heads flew through the air. Watching from the rear, I quietly calculated the situation. Lubu truly deserved his title as the strongest warrior of the three kingdoms. But before overwhelming troop superiority, individual strength alone simply wasn't enough. What I really wanted now was to wipe out all 30,000 of his soldiers. If that happened, Dongzhou would probably die from heartbreak alone. Lubu quickly realized the battle was beyond saving. If he continued fighting, every last one of his 30,000 men would perish. He was arrogant, but he wasn't stupid. "Retreat! Retreat immediately," he shouted before turning Red Hair around and fleeing at full speed. In the blink of an eye, he had already disappeared far into the distance. Once their commander fled, the remaining Bingzhou cavalry completely collapsed, crying and screaming as they ran for their lives. I didn't order the Snow Dragon cavalry to pursue. Red Hair was simply too fast, and chasing Lubu recklessly might allow him to counterattack unexpectedly. Chen Qingji soon rode over, looking as elegant as ever, not even a drop of blood staining his robes. "My lord, Lubu has retreated." I spat on the ground and laughed. "He runs pretty fast." Still, this battle is enough. Pingqiu is safe for now. Looking back at my former stable slave brothers, I found them standing there in complete shock. Da Zhuang ran over, touched one of the Weiwu infantry's massive shields, and stared with his mouth hanging open. "Brother Chen, we actually forced Lu Bu to run away? That was Lu Bu!" I patted his shoulder and laughed confidently. "Lu Bu, he's nothing. Stay with me and you'll see enemies far stronger than him." Although I spoke calmly, I couldn't deny how excited I felt inside. Not only had we won, but we had won in spectacular fashion. Glancing at the system interface, I noticed that driving back Lubu had earned me yet another batch of rewards, but I had no time to examine them now. There were two peerless beauties waiting for me back inside the city. Leading my army back into Pingqiu, I saw countless townspeople peeking nervously through doors and windows. They had heard the thunderous explosions outside and thought the heavens themselves had become enraged. But when they saw me return safely alongside countless elite soldiers, the way they looked at me completely changed. Their eyes no longer held simple gratitude. They were filled with genuine awe. As soon as I stepped into the county office, Diao Chan and Chai Yan hurried out to greet me. Diao Chan looked at me anxiously and softly asked, "General, are you all right?" Her beautiful eyes were overflowing with worry. Kai Yan said nothing, but the tension on her face revealed exactly how concerned she had been. Bursting into laughter, I wrapped an arm around each of their shoulders. What could possibly happen to me? Lubu ran away faster than a rabbit. He didn't even manage to touch a single hair on my horse. Diao Chan's face instantly turned crimson all the way to her neck as I held her close. Yet she made no attempt to pull away. Her heart was in complete turmoil. The man before her was simply too overwhelmingly powerful. I had defeated Lubu as nothing more than a former stable slave. If that story spread, who would actually believe it? Standing beside me, Chayan's body was a little stiff as I held her close, yet she made no attempt to resist. Looking at my face filled with confidence, admiration quietly grew inside her heart. I led both women into the inner hall and dropped into the seat of honor. At that moment, I felt like I was overflowing with energy. Compared to spending my days grooming horses in Dongzhuo's mansion, the feeling of controlling power was better by 10,000 times. Da Chuang! I called out. He immediately hurried inside. Brother Chen, what do you need? I grinned. Go bring me the best food and wine in the city. Tonight, I'm going to drink properly with all our brothers. Before long, the tables in the county office were filled with food and wine. I sat in the middle with Diao Chan and Chai Yan beside me, while Da Zhuang and the former stable slaves drank and played drinking games outside in the courtyard, making enough noise to shake the place. I didn't stop them. Everyone had been holding in their frustration for far too long. They deserved a chance to celebrate. I lifted my cup and took a sip. The wine of this era wasn't very strong. It tasted more like juice than liquor. Looking at the two peerless beauties beside me made my heart feel lighter than ever. Diao Chan gently poured wine into my cup with incredible tenderness, while Chai Yan quietly placed food onto my plate. She spoke very little, but I could feel her eyes drifting toward me again and again. Suddenly, Chai Yan asked softly, "General, what do you plan to do from here?" I set down my cup and looked into her clear eyes. What else? Continue recruiting soldiers and building my strength. The world is already in chaos. Without troops or food, you're nothing more than meat waiting to be eaten. Diao Chan sighed gently. But Dongzhuo won't let us go. Lubu may have lost, but the Xiliang army still has hundreds of thousands of soldiers. I smiled and gently pinched her soft cheek. So what if he has hundreds of thousands? You've both seen my soldiers. Do you really think ordinary men can compare to them? Give me enough time, and Dongzhuo's army won't even be worth worrying about. My words sounded unbelievably arrogant, yet neither Diao-chan nor Kai-yan thought I was boasting. They hadn't personally witnessed the battle outside the city, but they had heard the thunderous explosions and seen Lubu fleeing in humiliation. The evidence was impossible to deny. Just then, the familiar mechanical voice echoed inside my head. Host has defeated Lubu and become famous throughout the land. Diao-chan and Chai-yan's affection has greatly increased. Current affection, Diao-chan 75, Chai-yan 70. Congratulations, host. Stage reward unlocked. Shenji Battalion expanded to 10,000 soldiers. Congratulations. Divine Physician Hua Tuo has arrived outside the city. Congratulations. Reward 3,000 Black Armor Cavalry. My heart skipped a beat. What incredible rewards! Expanding the Shenji Battalion to 10,000 musketeers increased my firepower several times over. The Black Armor Cavalry were Li Shimin's legendary elite heavy cavalry, among the strongest mounted troops in history. But the reward that excited me most was Hua Tuo. In an age filled with endless wars, having the greatest physician in history by my side was like gaining several extra lives. I wanted nothing more than to rush outside and inspect my new troops while welcoming Hua Tuo personally, but I knew I couldn't leave just yet. The two beauties before me deserved my attention first. Turning toward Chai Yan, I smiled. Wenji, you said you wanted to see a different kind of world. In a few days, I'll show you what true abundance really looks like. She blinked in confusion. General, are you referring to those potato seeds? I nodded confidently. Exactly. Once they're planted, no one under heaven will ever starve again. When that day comes, you'll become one of the greatest contributors to this world. Kai Yan looked at me in silence, her heart rippling with emotions. Every man she had met before had either hidden behind empty talk of morality or cared only about war and slaughter. I was the first man she had ever encountered who possessed overwhelming strength while still genuinely caring about the common people. Looking at me, she quietly said, General, you're truly different from everyone else. There was a warmth in her eyes that hadn't existed before. Watching the two of us, Diao Chan couldn't help feeling a little jealous. When I had first taken her away, she had resisted with all her heart, but after spending these days together, she had realized that although I was overbearing, I truly cared about her. Laughing, I wrapped an arm around each of their waists. Enough with all this, General. It sounds far too distant. Call me husband. Both beauties instantly blushed bright red. Lowering her head, Diao Chan whispered so softly it was almost impossible to hear, Husband! Chayan bit her lip, hesitated for a long moment, and finally lowered her voice. Husband! I burst into laughter. At that moment, it felt as though life itself had reached its peak. Just then, Da Chuang rushed inside, wearing a strange expression. Brother Chen, there's an old man outside the city gate carrying a medicine box. He insists you invited him, says his name is Hua Tuo. My eyes immediately lit up. I stood to my feet at once. Quick, invite him in. No, forget that. I'll welcome him myself. Taking Diao Chan and Tai Yan with me, I walked to the entrance of the county office where an elderly man with white hair and a long beard stood calmly carrying a medical case. His spirit remained remarkably energetic despite his age. The moment he saw me, he respectfully bowed. This old man, Hua Tuo, greets my lord. I hurried over and personally helped him up. Divine Physician Hua, I've been waiting for you. With you here, my heart can finally rest easy. Hua Tuo smiled gently. My lord flatters me. I heard you possess a method capable of saving the people, so I have come to offer my services. I naturally understood he was referring to the potatoes. I personally escorted Hua Tuo inside and arranged comfortable accommodations for him. Meanwhile, back in Luoyang, the Chancellor's residence had completely exploded into chaos. Dongchuo was so furious, he looked ready to kill someone on the spot. Sitting inside the grand hall, he clutched a huge wine jar and drank furiously while the terrified palace maids trembled nearby. In the center of the room, Lu Bu stood with his head lowered. His armor was covered with scratches, and his appearance was more miserable than anyone had ever seen. Dongchuo suddenly smashed the wine jar onto the floor. It exploded into countless fragments. What did you just say? Say it again. Lu Bu swallowed nervously before answering in a trembling voice. Chancellor, Chen Xuan somehow obtained weapons that roar like thunder. They kill from an incredible distance. More than half of the Bingzhou cavalry I brought were wiped out. Dongchuo's eyes nearly burst from their sockets. 30,000 Bingzhou cavalry sent to capture one former stable slave in Little Pingqiu, and you returned with only half your army? Lu Bu, do you think I don't dare kill you? Lu Bu immediately dropped to his knees. Please calm your anger, Chancellor. It's not because your subordinate lacked ability. Those strange weapons were simply too terrifying. And besides that, he commands an unbelievably powerful silver-armored cavalry. I truly fought with everything I had. Beside them, Li Ru slowly waved his feather fan, his face darker than ever. Chancellor, I believe General Lu Bu is telling the truth. Hua Xiong reported exactly the same thing earlier. This Chen Xuan is certainly no ordinary stable slave. Dongchuo paced around the hall, his massive body shaking with rage. If he is not a stable slave, then what is he? Some immortal descending from heaven? I've conquered the world for years, survived countless storms, yet I've now been humiliated twice by a stable slave. Li Ru calmly continued. He has now occupied Pingqiu and taken both Diao Chan and Chai Yan. His fame is spreading rapidly throughout the land, and every warlord is watching him closely. If we fail to deal with him soon, the consequences will continue growing. At that moment, noisy footsteps echoed outside. Wang Yun hurried into the hall, his face as pale as paper. Chancellor, something terrible has happened! Dongchuo glared at him impatiently. Minister Wang, is this about your daughter again? Wang Yun frantically waved his hands. No! News has spread throughout Luoyang that Chen Xuan defeated General Lu Bu outside Pingqiu. People are saying he's the reincarnation of the thunder god who can summon heavenly lightning to kill his enemies. Dongchuo became even angrier. Thunder god? That's nothing but nonsense for fools. Wang Yun sighed bitterly. But the people all believe it. Even the powerful families who once supported you are beginning to waver. They now think even you can't suppress a mere stable slave. Enraged beyond reason, Dongchuo grabbed Wang Yun by the collar and lifted him into the air. Old fool, say that again! Wang Yun was so frightened he nearly wet himself. Mercy, Chancellor, I'm only repeating what everyone is saying. Dongchuo threw him onto the ground before turning toward Li Ru. What should we do? Should I personally lead an army to Pingqiu? Li Ru thought quietly for a moment before shaking his head. Absolutely not. The 18 coalition lords have already begun gathering under Yuan Shao. If we move our main army against Pingqiu now, Luoyang will be left vulnerable. Dong Zhuo clenched his teeth. So we're just supposed to let that little bastard enjoy himself in Pingqiu? A sinister smile slowly appeared on Li Ru's face. Of course not. Instead, we should give him an official title. Dong Zhuo stared at him in disbelief. An official title? Are you insane? He stole my women and slaughtered my soldiers, and you want me to reward him? Li Ru leaned closer and whispered into his ear. Make him general who pacifies the east and appoint him governor of Pingqiu. Then order him to defend Hulao Pass. Isn't he powerful? Let him fight Yuan Shao and Cao Cao instead. Once both sides exhaust themselves, we'll simply harvest the victory. Dong Zhuo's eyes immediately brightened. Excellent. Borrow someone else's knife to kill him. If he dies at the hands of the coalition, I'll never have to worry about him again. If he defeats the coalition instead, I'll find another opportunity to eliminate him later. Standing nearby, Lu Bu felt utterly miserable. He, the mighty Marquis Wen, would now have to stand on equal footing with a former stable slave. Yet, after his humiliating defeat, he didn't dare voice a single complaint and silently swallowed his resentment. Meanwhile, completely unaware of Dong Zhuo's new scheme, I was walking through the barren fields outside Pingqiu with Hua Tuo. My thoughts were entirely focused on how to grow the potatoes as quickly as possible. Pointing toward the dry yellow earth beneath our feet, I asked, Divine Physician, what do you think of this land? Hua Tuo crouched down, grabbed a handful of soil, examined it carefully, and nodded. The soil is suitable enough. As long as there is sufficient water, the potatoes you described should grow very well. I grinned with satisfaction. Perfect. Far away in Chenliu, inside Yuan Shao's military camp, the night was already deep, yet Yuan Shao remained awake, silently staring at a military report lying on his desk. The report clearly stated that Chen Xuan of Pingqiu had defeated Lu Bu's 30,000 elite troops with far fewer soldiers. Slamming the report onto the table, Yuan Shao frowned at his advisors. How is this possible? Lu Bu may be arrogant, but his Bingzhou cavalry are unquestionably formidable. How could a former stable slave possibly command such an army? Feng Ji cautiously replied, My lord, we've heard Chen Xuan possesses cavalry capable of unleashing thunder itself. His appearance was also extremely sudden, as though he simply emerged from nowhere. Yuan Shao snorted dismissively. Thunder? That's just cheap tricks to deceive people. Lu Bu must have underestimated him and allowed this little thief to seize an opportunity. At that moment, a guard announced from outside, Cao Cao requests an audience. Yuan Shao immediately replied, Let Mengde enter. Cao Cao strode into the tent with unusual excitement on his face. Sitting down, he got straight to the point. Benchu, you've received the news as well, haven't you? Yuan Shao nodded. About Pingqiu. Mengde, who do you think this Chen Xuan really is? Cao Cao took a sip of water before answering thoughtfully. You and I both saw him back in Luoyang. He truly was nothing more than Dong Zhuo's stable slave. Yet now he has taken both Diaochan and Chai Yan while defeating Lu Bu so thoroughly. What does that tell you? Yuan Shao narrowed his eyes. That he was hiding his strength all along? Cao Cao slowly shook his head. No. It tells me he has a powerful force supporting him that we know absolutely nothing about. I already sent spies to Pingqiu. His soldiers wear exceptional armor, possess extraordinary discipline, and clearly weren't trained overnight. Most terrifying of all are those strange fire weapons capable of killing people from over 100 paces away. Fire weapons? Yuan Shao had never even heard such a term before. Cao Cao stood and pointed toward Pingqiu on the map. He now controls the region directly between us and Luoyang. If he sides with Dong Zhuo, we will face enormous trouble. If he chooses independence instead, then another terrifying power has entered the struggle for the world. Yuan Shao laughed dismissively. Mengde, I think you're giving him far too much credit. He's still just a stable slave. Once we destroy Dong Zhuo, eliminating him afterward will be nothing more than a simple task. Looking at Yuan Shao's overconfidence, Cao Cao quietly sighed. He knew better than anyone that Yuan Shao possessed great ambition but lacked true vision. Benchu, don't underestimate him. I've already heard that Dong Zhuo has sent people to Pingqiu to offer him an official title. Yuan Shao was stunned. An official title? What position? General who pacifies the East, along with the governorship of Pingqiu, Cao Cao answered coldly. Dong Zhuo intends to recruit him and use him against us. Yuan Shao's expression immediately changed. That traitor is truly shameless. Then what should we do? A sharp light flashed in Cao Cao's eyes. We should also offer him a title. In the name of the coalition leader, appoint him Vanguard General against the tyrant. Tell him that if he joins the alliance, once Dong Zhuo is defeated, high office and great rewards will be waiting for him. Yuan Shao hesitated. But he stole Chai Yan. She was supposed to marry into the Wei family, and the Wei clan holds great influence in Hedong. Won't this offend them? Cao Cao gave a faint, cold smile. Can the Wei family fight our battles? Can they defeat Lu Bu? Right now, the only thing that matters is ensuring Chen Xuan doesn't stand on Dong Zhuo's side. After thinking it over for a while, Yuan Shao finally nodded. Very well. We'll do exactly as you suggest. At that very moment, back in Pingqiu, I was personally directing my former stable slave brothers as they plowed the fields. Da Zhuang held a hoe while staring at the sprouted potatoes in his hand with complete confusion. Brother Chen, are we really going to plant these things? I looked at Da Zhuang, who was holding a sprouted potato with a face full of disgust. Brother Chen, this thing looks like a rock. Can something this ugly really taste good? Without another word, I kicked him right in the backside. Quit talking nonsense. These are my treasures. Once they grow, you'll be fighting everyone else just to get a bite while they're still hot. Deep down, I was genuinely excited. If all 10,000 mu of potatoes grew successfully, Pingqiu would truly come alive. By then, I wouldn't just have an invincible army, I would also have an endless supply of food. Just then, Ergu came running over, completely out of breath. Brother Chen, two groups of people just arrived outside the city. They both say they're here to deliver official seals. I paused for a moment before bursting into laughter. Two groups? Looks like I've become quite the popular prize. Tossing my shovel aside and brushing the dirt from my hands, I led everyone toward the city gate. I already knew exactly what this was. Dong Zhuo and Yuan Shao were both trying to pull me onto their side. Outside Pingqiu's gate, the two delegations stood glaring at one another. On the left were extravagantly dressed attendants led by a plump eunuch sent by Dong Zhuo. On the right stood a disciplined delegation led by a scholarly official representing Yuan Shao. I casually walked over carrying the same hoe I'd been using to work the fields, looking every bit like an ordinary farmer. Both delegations stared at me in complete disbelief. The fat eunuch pinched his voice and asked awkwardly, "Your general who pacifies the East, why do you look like a farmer?" I spat out the blade of grass I had been chewing and grinned. "Because I am a farmer." "Go on then. What treasures did your masters bring me?" The eunuch immediately forced a smile and pulled out an imperial decree. "General Chen, receive the Chancellor's decree. In recognition of your unmatched bravery, His Excellency appoints you General who pacifies the East, Governor of Pingqiu, with 1,000 taels of gold and 100 bolts of fine silk as rewards." Not to be outdone, Yuan Shao's envoy stepped forward loudly. "General Chen, by order of Alliance leader Yuan Shao, you are appointed vanguard against the tyrant and chancellor of Ping Yuan. If you join the coalition, even greater rewards await you in the future." Listening to both offers, I couldn't stop smiling inside. What a wonderful deal. I hadn't done a thing for either of them, yet both sides were handing me official titles. I accepted Dong Zhuo's decree, took Yuan Shao's appointment letter, then casually stuffed both into Da Zhuang's arms. Waving dismissively, I said, "All right, I'll keep the gifts. Go back and tell your masters that I'm busy farming. I don't have time for war right now. Once my crops are harvested, then I'll think about who I want to help." Both delegations froze in complete disbelief. Accepting gifts without agreeing to do anything? Who in the world acted like that? The eunuch carefully forced out a smile. "General Chen, I'm afraid that might not be appropriate." I glared at him. "What's inappropriate about it? Go tell Dong Zhuo that Diao Chan is living very well with me so he can stop thinking about her. And while you're at it, tell Yuan Shao that Chai Yan is now my wife. If the Wei family dares come looking for trouble, I'll dig up every one of their ancestors' graves." The two delegations left in complete humiliation. Walking back toward the city, Da Zhuang kept flipping through the gold and silver rewards while scratching his head. "Brother Chen, are we really not going to help either side fight?" I snorted. "Fight for them? They're trying to use us as cannon fodder. Right now, the most important things are territory and food." Back inside the county office, I summoned Chen Qingji. Qingji organized the newly arrived Black Armor Cavalry and the expanded Shenji Battalion, strengthen the city walls and improve every part of our defenses. Pingqiu is far too small now. We need to expand it. Chen Qingji nodded respectfully. "My lord, preparations are already underway. However, because of your growing reputation, I expect a large number of refugees will soon arrive." I waved my hand confidently. "Accept every single one of them. As long as they're willing to work, I'll make sure they're fed." From that day onward, Pingqiu became one enormous construction site. Every potato seed granted by the system was planted into the fields. I even worked alongside the refugees personally, teaching them how to fertilize the soil and irrigate the crops. At first, they had been frightened of me. After all, my reputation had been built through countless battles. But once they saw me eating from the same communal pots, handing out clothes and food with my own hands, their fears quickly disappeared. General Chen is truly a good man. That's right. As long as you follow General Chen, you'll never go hungry. The fame of Pingqiu spread farther every day. Refugees weren't the only ones arriving anymore. Frustrated officials and neglected scholars also began coming one after another to pledge their loyalty. Kai Yan remained incredibly busy establishing schools alongside several literate refugees. Meanwhile, Diao Chan organized the women of the city, sewing clothes, preparing military supplies, and supporting the growing army. Watching the city flourish before my eyes filled me with satisfaction. This was exactly the kind of foundation I had always wanted. One afternoon, I sat atop the city wall, quietly gazing into the distance when the system suddenly spoke once more. Host has earned the people's wholehearted support. Territory prosperity increased. Congratulations, host. Reward: 5,000 Xuanwu heavy infantry. Congratulations. Legendary archer Huang Zhong is waiting outside the city. I jumped to my feet. What? Huang Zhong? Old Huang is here? My heart nearly exploded with excitement. Huang Zhong was one of the greatest archers in the entire Three Kingdoms. Combined with the Shenji battalion's firearms, my long-range combat power would reach an entirely new level. I hurried down from the city wall as fast as I could. Along a quiet road outside Pingqiu, an elderly general rode slowly atop a yellow horse with an enormous bow strapped across his back. Looking at the newly reinforced walls and the neatly organized farmland surrounding the city, he nodded with approval. This Chen Xuan truly seems like a man who accomplishes real things, Huang Zhong murmured to himself. Before I even reached the city gate, I spotted the dignified old general in the distance. Without hesitation, I hurried over and bowed respectfully. General Huang, I've been waiting for you for so long. Huang Zhong quickly dismounted and personally helped me back to my feet. My lord, there is no need for such courtesy. I, Huang Zhong, am willing to devote my life to serving you. Grabbing his hand, I laughed heartily. Come, tonight we'll drink until we're satisfied. Inside my heart, I couldn't stop thinking that with Huang Zhong's legendary archery working alongside the Shenji battalion's muskets, who under heaven could possibly stand against me now? Meanwhile, deep inside a secret chamber within Dongzhuo's chancellor's residence in Luoyang, Li Ru sat across from an ordinary-looking middle-aged man. At first glance, the man looked so average that he could disappear into any crowd, but every so often, a chilling glimmer flashed through his eyes. This man was Jia Shu, the infamous poison strategist. Lowering his voice, Li Ru said, Wenhe, the chancellor has placed great expectations on this journey to Pingqiu. Jia Shu calmly sipped his tea before asking, Wenyu, is this Chen Xuan truly that extraordinary? Li Ru sighed heavily. Lu Bu lost over half of 30,000 elite cavalry. What do you think? Setting down his teacup, Jiaxu gently tapped the table with his fingers. A mere stable slave suddenly possessing armies of this caliber and those terrifying fire weapons, there's clearly something far deeper at work. Li Ru nodded. Exactly why you're going. If possible, persuade him to surrender. If not, uncover his secrets. Most importantly, obtain the method used to produce those fire weapons. Jiaxu smiled faintly, though there was something sinister behind it. Recruit him? I doubt it. A man like that possesses ambitions far too great. Li Ru pulled out a letter and handed it over. This is the Chancellor's personal offer of surrender. Tell him he may ask for any condition he wishes. Jiaxu accepted the letter and slowly stood up. Very well, I'll make the trip. But let me be clear beforehand. If things become impossible, I'll save my own life first. Li Ru nodded. Naturally. Several days later, Jiaxu arrived alone outside Pingqiu. Rather than wearing official robes, he dressed as nothing more than an ordinary traveling scholar. Pingqiu's security was strict, yet scholars and common people entering the city were treated with courtesy, allowing him to pass through without difficulty. The moment he entered the city, however, he was stunned. The streets were spotless, the citizens looked healthy rather than starving, and construction projects filled every corner of the city with organized activity. Even more shocking were the fields outside the walls. Harvest season had not yet arrived, yet the strange crops growing there flourished with incredible vitality. Jiaxu crouched beside one of the fields, carefully studying the unfamiliar plants. So, these are the potatoes Chen Xuan planted. Just then, a patrol approached. At its head was none other than Da Zhuang. Hey, old man, what are you doing? Don't touch the crops. Jiaxu stood up, dusted the dirt from his hands, and politely cupped his fists. General, this old man was simply curious about what is growing here. Da Zhuang proudly puffed out his chest. Our General Chen planted these miracle crops. Once they're ready, they'll save people all across the world. Miracle crops, Jiashu sneered inwardly while maintaining an expression of admiration. General Chen truly is a remarkable man. My name is Jiashu, and I've come to serve him. Would you kindly introduce me? Hearing that Jiashu wished to join them, Da Zhuang's attitude softened considerably. Alright, come with me, but let me warn you first. Brother Chen hates those scholars who waste time talking in circles. If you've got something to say it directly. Jiashu smiled faintly and followed Da Zhuang into the county office. At that moment, I was inside the main hall studying maps with Huang Zhong. The instant Da Zhuang casually announced, Brother Chen, there's a scholar named Jia Shu who wants to join us. The brush slipped straight from my fingers and clattered onto the floor. I shot to my feet with my eyes wide open. Who? Say that again? What did you just say his name was? Da Zhuang scratched his head in confusion. Jia Shu, an old man who looked kind and approachable, arrived. But the moment I heard his name, my heart was thrown into turmoil. Jia Shu, one of the most cunning foxes of the Three Kingdoms. What was he doing in Pingqiu? There was only one explanation. Dongzhuo had sent him as a spy. I took a deep breath, calmed myself, and ordered my men, let him in. As Jiashu stepped into the hall, his eyes landed on me, and a trace of shock flashed across his face. Although I was dressed in ordinary linen clothes, the aura of authority surrounding me was even more overwhelming than Dongzhuo's. My eyes in particular were so deep that he couldn't read them. He respectfully bowed and said, This humble man, Jiashu, greets General Chen. I stared at him for a long moment before breaking into a smile. Jia Wenhe, let's not waste time with polite words. Did Dongzhuo send you here to kill me or to recruit me? His heart skipped a beat. He never expected me to call him by his courtesy name the instant we met, let alone expose his identity so directly. His smile froze for a moment before he quickly regained his composure. General, you truly are straightforward. The Chancellor does indeed wish to recruit you, but I came mainly because I wanted to see what kind of man could make Lu Bu tremble in fear. I snorted coldly. Seen enough? If you have, then get lost and tell Dongzhuo this. I've accepted his beauties, but one day I'll take his head too. Instead of getting angry, Jiashu calmly found a seat and sat down. General, why push people away? The Chancellor's offer is very generous. I walked up to him, looking down from above. Generous? What can he possibly give me? I can earn my own gold and silver. Diao-chan is already behind me. As for power, sooner or later, this entire world will belong to me. Why would I need him to give me anything? Hearing that, Jiashu was deeply shaken. My ambition was far greater than he had imagined. General, your aspirations are truly admirable, he admitted before changing the subject. But Pingqiu is surrounded by enemies. Yuan Shao is to the north, Dongzhuo to the south. Your soldiers may be elite, but how long can your grain supplies last? I pointed outside the city. See those potatoes? Once those 10,000 acres are ready, my grain supply will last until the end of time. Jiashu fell silent. Everything he had seen and heard during his journey told him I wasn't exaggerating. After a long pause, he looked at me and asked, General, I have a humble request. Could you allow me to stay in Pingqiu for a few days? I wish to see with my own eyes how you govern this land. I smiled brightly. Of course, Jia Wenhe, stay as long as you want. But let me warn you, we don't feed freeloaders here. If you stay, you work. He blinked in confusion. Work? What can this old man possibly do? I pointed toward a mountain of official documents. Kai Wenji can't handle all the paperwork alone. Since you're here, you'll be her assistant. Jia Shu was completely dumbfounded. A man of his status was actually being assigned to assist a woman. Yet, looking into my unquestionable gaze, he could only force a bitter smile and nod. Very well, I accept. Jiashu settled down in Pingqiu. At first, he believed I simply wanted to humiliate him. But once he started processing the government documents, he realized he was completely wrong. Pingqiu's administration was incredibly complex, yet astonishingly efficient. I had established systems he had never even heard of before. Public ownership of land, rewards based on labor, even specialized sanitation management. What gave him the biggest headache was Kai Yun herself. Not only was she breathtakingly beautiful, but her mind was frighteningly sharp. Every time Jiashu tried to manipulate the paperwork or secretly pass information back to Luoyang, Kai Yun exposed him instantly. Pointing at one report, she calmly said, Mr. Jia, this account doesn't add up, does it? His old face turned red as he awkwardly laughed. This old man's eyesight isn't what it used to be. She looked at him with a trace of warning in her eyes. Mr. Jia, the general said Pingqiu doesn't support idle people and it certainly doesn't support liars. Jiashu silently groaned. Pingqiu was like an iron fortress. There wasn't even the smallest crack for him to exploit. Half a month passed and the potatoes were almost ready for harvest. Jiaxu knew he couldn't wait any longer. Under the cover of darkness, he attempted to sneak out of the city and report everything to Dongzhuo. But the moment he reached the gate, a squad of soldiers stopped him. Leading them was Huang Zhong, carrying his great bow with a warm smile. "Mr. Jia, where are you going so late at night?" Jiaxu's heart sank. I couldn't sleep. I thought I'd go for a walk." Huang Zhong chuckled coldly. "Perfect. The general is taking a walk too. Come with me." They escorted Jiaxu onto the city wall, where I stood looking into the distance through a strange black tube, a telescope. Without turning around, I said, "So, Wenhei, you're here." Realizing his cover was blown, Jiaxu gave up pretending. "General, if you already knew I intended to leave, why didn't you stop me earlier?" I lowered the telescope and turned toward him. "I wanted to see what tricks you could come up with. Jia Wenhei, every letter you wrote to Dongzhuo is already in my hands." I pulled out a stack of papers and casually tossed them onto the ground. Jiaxu's face instantly turned pale. "Impossible. I clearly used carrier pigeons." I pointed toward the sky. "See that eagle? I raised it myself. Every pigeon you released became its dinner." Jiaxu collapsed onto the ground in defeat. "General, your foresight is beyond compare. I surrender. Kill me or spare me as you wish." I shook my head. "Kill you? Why would I? A talent like you is too valuable to waste." Jiaxu let out a cold laugh. "So you wish to recruit me? I may fear death, but I won't change masters so easily." I walked beside him and pointed toward the endless green potato fields below. "Wenhei, tell me, what do the people of this world truly want? They don't care who wears the emperor's crown. They just want enough food to eat. Can Dongzhuo give them that? Can Yuan Shao?" Jiaxu remained silent. "But I can," I declared firmly. "Follow me and you'll witness a true golden age. When that day comes, the name Jia Wenhei won't be remembered as a poisonous strategist. You'll be remembered as one of the founding heroes of a new era." He looked at me, conflict flickering in his eyes. He was a smart man, and smart men understood when the tide had turned. Testing me one last time, he asked, "General, aren't you afraid I might surrender only in appearance?" I burst into laughter. "I have soldiers in my hands, grain in my fields, a system backing me, and even heaven itself on my side. Why would I fear one old man?" I patted his shoulder. "Enough pretending. I already know your heart has begun to change. Starting tomorrow, you don't have to be Kai Wenji's assistant anymore." Jiaxu looked surprised. "Then, what should I do?" I pointed toward Luoyang. "Be my military strategist. Dongzhuo, that fat old man, has probably waited long enough. It's time we sent him a very special gift." Jiaxu straightened his robes, then gave me a deep, respectful bow. "Jiaxu greets my lord." At that instant, the system notification echoed in my mind. "Peerless strategist Jiaxu has surrendered. Favorability 60. Congratulations, host, you have obtained 1000 Jin Yue. Congratulations, host, you have obtained 3000 divine archers." I almost shouted in excitement. The Jin Yue, the most terrifying intelligence organization of ancient times. With them under my command, there would no longer be any secret in this world beyond my reach. Smiling, I asked, "Wenhei, now that you've joined me, give me your first strategy. How do we make Dongzhuo so furious that he coughs up blood, yet still doesn't dare attack us?" Jiaxu smiled darkly. "Simple, my lord. Didn't Dongzhuo appoint you General of the East? Write him a reply saying that both Diao Chan and Chai Yan have already become your women, invite him to your wedding banquet, and while you're at it, tell him Pingqiu's potatoes are ripe. If he wants to eat them, he'll have to exchange Luoyang's defense map." I immediately gave him a thumbs up. "Brilliant! Truly brilliant. No one but a poisonous strategist like you could come up with something this ruthless." Soon, the potatoes in Pingqiu finally ripened. The entire city celebrated as though it were a grand festival. I personally led everyone into the fields and dug up the very first potato plant. As my hoe struck the soil, clusters of round golden potatoes burst out of the earth. "So many," Da Zhuang cried in disbelief. I weighed one in my hand. It was nearly half a kilogram. My heart finally settled. 1 acre would easily yield 3 to 4,000 jin. In this era, it was nothing short of a miracle. Jiaxu stared with wide eyes. "My lord, this really is grain?" He had lived his entire life without ever seeing such an unbelievable harvest. I tossed a potato to Da Zhuang. "Wash them and boil enough for everyone." Before long, the rich aroma of freshly cooked potatoes drifted throughout Pingqiu. The refugees cautiously took their first bites, and their eyes lit up. "It's soft, sweet, delicious. With this, we'll never go hungry again." One after another, the people knelt toward me in unison. In their eyes, I was no longer just a general. I had become a savior sent from heaven. The system spoke once more. "Host has ended the famine and accumulated immeasurable merit. Loyalty has reached unwavering devotion. Congratulations, you have obtained 3,000 Iron Pagoda Cavalry. Congratulations, you have obtained high-yield rice seeds. Before I could fully celebrate, heavy hoofbeats suddenly echoed from outside the city. These sounded nothing like the Snow Dragon riders. They were heavier, each step pounding against my heart. I rushed onto the city wall and saw 3,000 cavalry standing silently before the gates. Both horse and rider were covered head to toe in thick black armor, revealing only their icy eyes. They held enormous wolf-tooth maces and looked like steel monsters marching straight out of hell. I gasped. The Iron Pagoda Cavalry. In the age of cold weapons, they were nothing less than invincible tanks. Standing beside me, even Jashu's voice trembled. He could feel the overwhelming killing intent radiating from that force. I grinned. Wenhei, this is our true foundation. With these 3,000 Iron Pagoda Cavalry, together with the Snow Dragon Riders and the Divine Machine Battalion, I could probably crush Luoyang head-on. Even so, I didn't rush to attack. I knew the coalition of the 18 warlords was already approaching Hulao Pass. The real show had only just begun. Suddenly, a Jinyue agent appeared behind me like a ghost. My lord, news from Luoyang. After Dongjuo read your letter, he was so enraged that he vomited blood on the spot. He has already ordered Niu Fu to lead 100,000 soldiers and wipe Pingqiu off the map. I sneered. 100,000 troops? Niu Fu, that useless fool, thinks he can command them? Turning toward Jiashu, I asked, Wenhei, what do you think? Stroking his beard, Jiashu's eyes gleamed with cunning. My lord, Niu Fu is nothing to fear, but we shouldn't fight him here in Pingqiu. Then where? Hulao Pass, he answered while pointing at the map. We should seize Hulao Pass while Niu Fu marches out and the coalition attacks. Once we capture it, Luoyang's front gate will belong to us. My eyes lit up. Hulao Pass, the greatest fortress in the land. Whoever controlled it controlled the entrance to Luoyang itself. Jiashu continued, first, pretend to be weak. Let Niu Fu think you're afraid. Once he reaches Pingqiu, we'll strike him with everything we have. I laughed loudly. Good, we'll do exactly that, Dazhuang. Brother Chen, what is it? He replied, with half a potato still stuffed in his mouth. Hide all the grain in the city and tell the people we're going to war. Make sure they guard our home well. Looking into the distance, my blood boiled with anticipation. Niu Fu, I hope your skull is hard enough because my Iron Pagoda Cavalry is about to smash it to pieces. Before Niu Fu's army could even reach Pingqiu, another force arrived first. They wore crimson battle robes beneath the banner of the Sun family, led by a towering warrior whose eyes blazed like fire, the tiger of Jiangdong, Sun Jian. As the vanguard of the coalition army, Sun Jian had been marching toward Hulao Pass when he was ambushed by Shiliang troops. Although he won the battle, he lost his way and accidentally wandered into Pingqiu's territory. Behind him, the veteran general Huang Gai pointed ahead and said, My lord, there's a city in front of us. Sun Jian reined in his horse and carefully studied Pingqiu. Though the city was small, its walls were extraordinarily sturdy, and strange soldiers could be seen standing atop them. Where is this place? He asked his guide. The guide hesitated before replying, My lord, I believe this is Pingqiu, now occupied by that former stable servant, Chen Xuan. Sun Jian snorted. Chen Xuan? The thief who stole both Diao Chan and Chai Yan? A man of fiery temper and unwavering righteousness, Sun Jian despised people who took advantage of chaos for personal gain. Waving his hand, he declared, Let's go take a look. Meanwhile, I had already spotted Sun Jian from the city wall. The Jinyue had long since reported everything about him. Jiashu stood beside me and said, My lord, that is Sun Jian. He is unmatched in bravery, but his personality is rigid. He won't be easy to deal with. I smiled faintly. The tiger of Jiangdong, huh? I know. General Huang Chong, go meet him. Huang Chong nodded, carried his great bow to the edge of the wall, and shouted, Is that General Sun Wentai below? Sun Jian looked up, saw the elderly general, and respectfully returned the greeting. Indeed, and who are you? Huang Chong replied proudly. This old man is Huang Chong. My lord, General Chen invites General Sun into the city for a conversation. Sun Jian froze for a moment before laughing coldly. Chen Xuan wants to see me? A mere former stable servant thinks he deserves my audience? Huang Zhong didn't get angry. Instead, he calmly drew his great bow and aimed at a stone monument standing before Sun Jian. The arrow shot forth like a falling star. With a deafening explosion, the monument shattered into countless pieces. Sun Jian's pupils contracted sharply. What incredible archery! He let out another cold laugh. Very well. Since General Chen has invited me, then I'll go and see what kind of man he really is. With that, Sun Jian brought Huang Gai and several trusted followers through the gates of Pingqiu. The moment Sun Jian entered the city, he was completely stunned. He saw rows of Shenji battalion soldiers standing perfectly straight, the Xuanjia army patrolling the streets, and in the distance, those iron pagoda cavalry that looked like towering steel monsters. His heart was shaken to the core. Even the elite soldiers of Jiangdong couldn't compare to the strength and equipment he saw before him. I waited for him inside the main hall, with Diao Chan and Chai Yan seated beside me. Rising to my feet, I greeted him politely. General Sun, I've heard much about you. He studied me carefully. Although I was young, the calm confidence I carried somehow made even him feel a trace of pressure. Without wasting time, he asked directly, Chen Xuan, since you possess such elite troops, why don't you join the coalition and help eliminate Dongzhuo? I invited him to sit down and personally poured him a cup of wine. Join the coalition? To listen to that fool Yuan Shao bark orders? Or to play political games with the scheming Cao Cao? Sun Jian was momentarily speechless. No one understood better than he did how divided the coalition really was. It was nothing more than loose sand. I pointed toward the potato fields outside and said, General Sun, I may not have joined the coalition, but what I'm doing is far more meaningful. I'm making sure these starving people can finally eat. He let out a cold laugh. A true man should accomplish legendary deeds in troubled times. Farming? What kind of achievement is that? I laughed heartily. If your stomach is empty, where do you find the strength to achieve greatness? Tell me, General Sun, how much grain do you have left? His expression immediately changed. I had hit his weak point. Yuan Shu had been withholding his supplies and he was desperately short on food. Looking him straight in the eye, I continued. If you don't mind eating my humble potatoes, I can feed your entire army. But I have one condition. What condition? He asked. I pointed at the map. Niu Fu is marching here with 100,000 troops. Help me harass his flanks. Once we destroy him, I'll give you 30,000 shi of grain, along with weapons like these. I pointed toward the musket in the hands of a Shenji battalion soldier. Sun Jian looked from the firearm to my elite soldiers outside and fell into deep thought. He knew that with grain and weapons like these, he could dominate Jiangdong after returning home. Finally, he slammed his hand onto the table. Fine, I accept. In truth, he had little choice. His army was starving, and the power I displayed had left him deeply wary. After he departed, Jiashu asked with concern, My lord, are you really going to give him firearms? I smiled. Of course, but I'll give him our outdated models. The gunpowder formula stays with me. Without gunpowder, those muskets are nothing more than expensive fire pokers. Jiashu couldn't help laughing. My lord is truly wise. By then, Niu Fu's 100,000 soldiers had already advanced to within 50 li of Pingqiu. Niu Fu wasn't especially capable, but his arrogance was unmatched. As Dongzhuo's son-in-law, he had spent years bullying everyone in the Xiliang army. His deputy, Dong Yue, pointed ahead and reported, General, Pingqiu is just ahead. Niu Fu snorted. Pass down my order. Surround the city completely. Don't let even a fly escape. I'm going to cut Chen Xuan into pieces and bring Diao Chan and Kai Yan back to the Chancellor as my reward. He never considered me a serious threat. In his eyes, 100,000 troops against a tiny county with only a few thousand defenders would be child's play. What he didn't know was that every move his army made was already being watched by my Jinyue. Standing atop the city wall, I gazed at the dust rising on the horizon. Niu Fu has arrived. Behind me stood Huang Chong, Chen Qingji, Sun Jian, and all the former stable servants who had followed me from the beginning. Chen Qingji asked, My lord, how do we fight this battle? I turned toward everyone, my eyes burning with excitement. We won't defend the city. We're taking the fight to them. Sun Jian stared at me in disbelief. Take the initiative? They have 100,000 soldiers, I sneered. So what if they do? The Snow Dragon Riders will charge. The Iron Pagoda cavalry will crush everything in their path. The Shenji battalion will cover us from long range. General Sun, you and your Jiangdong troops will cut off their retreat. In this battle, I'm going to completely shatter the courage of the Xiliang army. As night fell, Niu Fu's army established a massive camp outside Pingqiu. The endless rows of campfires stretched for more than 10 miles, an intimidating sight for anyone else. Inside his command tent, Niu Fu was drinking and boasting with his officers when a series of earth-shaking explosions suddenly erupted outside. Boom, boom, boom! The Shenji battalion unleashed their muskets and the newly rewarded grenades directly into the Xiliang camp. Enemy attack! Enemy attack! Chaos instantly erupted. Before the soldiers could even react, 3,000 Iron Pagoda cavalry crashed into the camp like an unstoppable flood of steel. Their massive wolf-tooth maces swung through the darkness as soldiers fell like wheat before a harvest. Moments later, Chen Qingji led 3,000 snow dragon riders charging in from the flank. I rode at the very front atop my white horse, spear in hand, fully unleashing the strength granted by the overlord's might. Every thrust pierced through multiple enemies. One strike skewered 3 Chiliang soldiers together as though they were candied hawthorns on a stick. I could feel endless power surging through my body. Every swing of my spear claimed more lives. Niufu sobered instantly in terror. Without even putting on his armor, he scrambled onto his horse and fled while shouting, "Chen Xuan, just wait!" I snorted coldly. Trying to run, General Huang? In the distance, Huang Zhong calmly drew his great bow and released a single arrow. It pierced straight through Niufu's shoulder, knocking him clean off his horse. Dazhuang rushed over with several men and pinned the struggling general to the ground. "Stay still, you fat pig!" In less than 2 hours, the 100,000 Xiliang soldiers had completely collapsed. More than 10,000 lay dead, while the survivors threw down their weapons and surrendered. Watching from the rear, Sun Jian stood frozen. Never in his life had he witnessed warfare like this. This wasn't a battle, it was a massacre. I walked over to the blood-covered Niu Fu and stepped on his chest. Looking down at him, I smiled. "General Niu, how do Pingqiu's potatoes taste?" Writhing in pain, he cried out, "Lord Chen, spare me, please spare me." Ignoring his begging, I turned toward the distant Hulao Pass. "Wenhe, Niufu has fallen. It's time to pay a visit to the coalition at Hulao Pass." At that moment, my ambition expanded beyond all limits. This world would belong to me. When dawn arrived, the battlefield outside Pingqiu was filled with the stench of blood and burned flesh. Riding slowly across the field, I saw Xiliang corpses scattered everywhere alongside the charred remains of their camps. In the distance, an enormous sea of prisoners knelt on the ground. There were at least 70 or 80,000 of them. Everyone had removed his armor, discarded his weapon, and kept his head lowered without daring to breathe too loudly. The 100,000 army Niufu had brought had vanished in a single night. Standing beside me, Sun Jian's face was even paler than those of the surrendered soldiers. His Jiangdong troops were equally stunned. They had fought battles before, but compared to the hell before their eyes, their previous victories looked like children playing games. After staring at me for a long time, Sun Jian finally forced out a question with a dry throat. "General Chen, how did you do this?" Even now, he still couldn't understand what had happened. The night before, he had followed my orders and cut off Niu Fu's retreat. But before he even reached his position, he heard explosions inside the enemy camp like endless firecrackers during the New Year. Flames shot into the sky and screams echoed everywhere. By the time he arrived, the battle was already over. All he saw were those terrifying black-armored cavalry crushing everything like unstoppable siege machines. He watched silver-armored riders carve through the enemy, leaving severed heads rolling across the ground. Most terrifying of all were the soldiers in red uniforms. The black iron weapons in their hands continuously spat fire and thunder. Anyone struck by those flashes immediately collapsed with bloody holes torn through their bodies. Witnessing such a battle made Sun Jian feel as though his entire life of warfare had been meaningless. I glanced at him and smiled. "General Sun, I told you, I have plenty of ways to deal with the Xiliang army." Deep inside, I couldn't help feeling satisfied. The combination of the Iron Pagoda Cavalry and the Shenji Battalion was simply unbeatable in the age of cold weapons. Niu Fu's 100,000 soldiers looked impressive on paper, but they were nothing more than an undisciplined mob. They weren't even enough to fill the gaps between the Iron Pagoda Cavalry's teeth. At that moment, Chen Qingji and Jiashu rode over. Chen Qingji still looked like an elegant scholar, his robes spotless, as though he had just returned from a pleasant outing instead of a brutal battle. Jia Shu, on the other hand, could barely hide his excitement. His eyes sparkled as he looked at the countless prisoners. His voice even trembled. "My lord, our losses in this battle were fewer than 500 men. We eliminated over 10,000 enemies and captured 83,721 prisoners. Niu Fu, Dong Yue, and every enemy commander have been taken." The moment Jiashu announced those numbers, Sun Jian, Huang Gai, Cheng Pu, and everyone behind them stared in complete disbelief. Fewer than 500 casualties, while destroying an army of 100,000. It sounded impossible. Sun Jian felt his heart ache. Compared to my forces, the elite troops he had spent years building looked no better than a group of beggars. I nodded with satisfaction before looking toward the surrendered soldiers. "Wenhe, what should we do with them?" Rubbing his hands together, Jiashu smiled sinisterly. "My lord, these are more than 80,000 healthy young men. Excellent labor. Pingqiu desperately needs workers. Let them build city walls, reclaim farmland, and plant crops." "No!" Sun Jian interrupted immediately. "General Chen, These are all Xilyang soldiers. If you leave them alive, they'll become a disaster sooner or later. In my opinion, they should all be buried alive to eliminate future trouble." The instant those words left his mouth, panic spread through the kneeling prisoners. Their faces turned deathly pale. Before I could respond, Jiashu laughed softly. "General Sun, I disagree. Killing them only earns us the reputation of butchers. Keeping them gives us 80,000 workers. And more importantly, it sends a message throughout the world. Every soldier will know that surrendering to my lord means survival, food, and hope. Winning hearts is the highest form of warfare." Sun Jian had no answer. Though unmatched in bravery, he could never compete with Jiashu in strategy. I clapped my hands. "Enough. We'll do as Wenhei suggested." Riding forward to the prisoners, I raised my voice so everyone could hear. "Listen carefully. From this day onward, your lives belong to me. If you want to live, then work honestly. I don't keep idle people here, but as long as you're willing to contribute, I guarantee you'll have enough food to eat and warm clothes to wear. But if anyone dares to betray me..." At that point, I turned my head toward the Iron Pagoda cavalry behind me. 3,000 steel-clad monsters stepped forward in perfect unison. The ground itself trembled beneath their synchronized march, and the surrendered soldiers were so terrified that it felt as though their souls had left their bodies. The surrendered soldiers immediately lowered their heads even further and began banging them against the ground. "General, spare us! We surrender! We are willing to serve our lord until death." I nodded in satisfaction. For now, fear had broken their will, and I had plenty of time to reshape them into loyal soldiers. "Da Zhuang," I called. "Brother Chen, I'm here!" he shouted excitedly as he ran over, carrying the enormous Nufu in one hand as though he were nothing more than a chicken. "Tie him up properly. Let him starve for 3 days. As for everyone else, bring them back to the city. Chen Qingji will reorganize them." After giving my orders, I turned toward Sun Jian with a meaningful smile. "General Sun, the battle is over. It's time to honor our agreement." Looking at me, Sun Jian's emotions were in complete turmoil. Taking a deep breath, he cupped his hands respectfully. "General Chen, you have my word, but before that, I have one more request." I smiled with interest. "And what would that be?" I already knew his mind was in chaos. After witnessing the terrifying power of the Shenji battalion and the Iron Pagoda cavalry firsthand, there was no way even the Tiger of Jiangdong could remain calm. He hesitated for a long moment, glanced at Huang Gai and the others behind him, then finally gritted his teeth and asked, "General Chen, could you sell me more of those weapons that roar like thunder? The price is negotiable." He had figured it out. Since he couldn't defeat me, he wanted to learn from me instead. If he could bring even a few hundred muskets back to Jiangdong, then Liu Biao and Yuan Shu would become insignificant in his eyes. I almost laughed. Sun Jian really knew how to adapt. Pretending to hesitate, I replied, "General Sun, it's not that I refuse to sell them. As you've seen, these weapons are incredibly powerful, but they're extremely difficult to manufacture. The materials alone cost a fortune, and I don't have many." Standing beside me, Jiashu nearly burst into laughter. He knew I was about to fleece Sun Jian. Growing anxious, Sun Jian quickly said, "General Chen, the price truly isn't a problem. Jiangdong may not be wealthy, but we can gather enough gold and silver. If that's not enough, I can trade war horses." The moment he mentioned war horses, my eyes lit up. Horses were exactly what I lacked. The Snow Dragon Riders and Iron Pagoda Cavalry already came with their own mounts, but my newly recruited soldiers were mostly infantry. If I wanted to transform them into cavalry, horses were essential. After pretending to think it over, I held up 3 fingers. 3,000 top-quality war horses in exchange for 300 muskets and enough ammunition for 10 battles. On top of that, I'll also give you 30,000 shi of potatoes as military rations. What do you think? Sun Jian calculated the offer. 300 muskets sounded small, but used properly, they could rival an entire cavalry unit. Combined with 30,000 shi of food, it would completely solve his immediate crisis. He slapped his thigh without hesitation. "Deal. I'll immediately send men back to Changsha to gather the horses." I burst into laughter. "Excellent. General Sun, I look forward to working together." Inside, I was already celebrating. Trading 300 outdated first-generation muskets for 3,000 war horses was an unbelievable bargain. As for the ammunition, I would only provide the most basic black powder. Once it ran out, he would have no choice but to come crawling back to me. After Sun Jian departed, satisfied yet weighed down by countless thoughts, Pingchu returned to its busy routine. The 80,000 surrendered soldiers were divided by Chen Qingji into dozens of separate camps. Every day they trained relentlessly, reclaimed farmland, built roads, and constructed new houses. I didn't stay idle either. I ordered Huatuo to establish a medical clinic for both soldiers and civilians, while Chai Yan expanded the academy to educate the children of the surrendered soldiers. Pingchu had become like a perfectly tuned machine, overflowing with life life and vitality. Watching everything unfold, Diao Chan and Chai Yan found their feelings for me growing even more complicated. That night, Diao Chan leaned gently against my chest and softly asked, "Husband, are you really going to lead all these people to fight for the world?" Smiling, I pinched her nose lightly. "What? Are you afraid?" She shook her head. "No. I'm just worried. You worked so hard to build a place where we can finally live in peace. I don't want you risking your life again." Kaiyan quietly added, "She's right. Every warlord in this land is ruthless. Isn't our life here already enough?" I knew they were only worried about me. Pulling both women into my arms, I sighed. "Do you really think hiding in Pingqiu will keep us safe? Dongjuo, Yuanshao, Cao Cao, every one of them wants me dead. This chaotic world is like swimming against the current. If you stop moving forward, you're swept backward. Even if we don't go looking for them, they'll eventually come looking for us. Rather than waiting to die, I'd rather strike first." The two women looked into my eyes and finally understood. The man they loved was destined to accomplish something that would shake the world. At the same time, inside the coalition camp of the 18 warlords at Chenliu, Cao Cao sat silently in his tent, frowning deeply at the intelligence report in his hand. Beside him, Chun Yu asked, "My lord, what troubles you?" Cao Cao handed him the bamboo slip and spoke in a heavy voice. "See for yourself." Chun Yu's pupils shrank the moment he read it. The report was simple. Niu Fu had led 100,000 Xiliang soldiers to attack Pingqiu. Overnight, the army was annihilated. Niu Fu had been captured alive, and more than 80,000 soldiers had surrendered. "Impossible!" Xun Yu blurted out. "An army of 100,000 destroyed in a single night? Is Chen Xuan some kind of immortal?" Cao Cao rubbed his temples. "I didn't believe it either, but every report confirms it. Sun Wentai witnessed everything personally. They say Chen Xuan commands soldiers armed with weapons that breathe fire and thunder, along with heavily armored cavalry completely covered in iron." Rising to his feet, Cao Cao paced back and forth across the tent, his expression growing darker with every step. Finally, he stopped and looked directly at Chun Yu. "Wenruo, I have a feeling. This Chen Xuan will become our greatest rival in the struggle for the world. His rise has been too fast, far beyond anything that makes sense. He is more dangerous than Dongjuo and Yuanshao combined." Chun Yu fell silent. Cao Cao rarely praised or feared anyone so highly, which only proved how enormous a threat I had become. After a pause, he asked, "Then what should we do?" A ruthless glint flashed across Cao Cao's eyes. "The coalition is about to attack Hulao Pass. Dongjuo has already suffered heavy losses. This is the perfect opportunity to crush him. But while fighting Dongjuo, we must uncover everything about Chen Xuan. And if necessary," he slowly drew a finger across his throat, "we eliminate him at all costs." Back in Pingqiu, more than half a month of rebuilding had transformed the city completely. The walls had been doubled in height and thickness, while over 100 small cannons, new creations from the Shenji battalion, were mounted along the ramparts. Their range wasn't impressive, but at close quarters their destructive power would devastate any siege force. The population had multiplied several times over. Under Jiashu's strategy of alternating rewards with harsh discipline, the 80,000 surrendered soldiers had gradually settled down. They discovered that life in Pingqiu, although exhausting, guaranteed full stomachs. Every meal came with potatoes and steaming white rice, and every few days, there was even meat. Compared to their miserable days in the Xiliang army, where they never knew if they'd eat their next meal or lose their heads, this life was paradise. Slowly but surely, their hearts began to belong to Pingqiu. One day, I gathered every corps commander inside the county hall. Looking over the map, I spoke firmly. "Everyone, we've stayed in Pingqiu long enough." My finger landed heavily on a single location. "It's time to meet these so-called heroes of the realm." The place I pointed to was Hulao Pass. Huangzhong, Chen Qingji, and Jiashu remained calm. They had long expected this day to come. Dazhuang and the other former stable servants, however, were so excited their faces turned bright red. "Brother Chen, we're finally going to attack Luoyang? Great! I've always wanted to see what the emperor looks like," Dazhuang shouted. I shot him an annoyed glance. "We're going to seize territory, not sightsee." Turning toward Chen Qingji, I asked, "How is the army's reorganization?" Standing respectfully, he reported, "My lord, after screening the 80,000 surrendered soldiers and removing the elderly, the weak, and the injured, we retained 60,000 able-bodied men. They've all been mixed with our veterans. 20,000 of the strongest have joined the Wei infantry as heavy troops. 10,000 skilled riders have become light cavalry. The remaining 30,000 now serve as reserves and logistical forces." I nodded with satisfaction. My military strength had reached an astonishing level. 3,000 Snow Dragon riders, 3,000 Iron Pagoda cavalry, and 3,000 Xuanjia army formed my elite front line. 10,000 Shenji battalion musketeers provided devastating ranged firepower. 12,000 Wei infantry served as heavily armored foot soldiers, alongside 10,000 light cavalry, 30,000 garrison troops, Huang Zhong's Divine Archer Battalion, and the Jinyue Intelligence Network. Altogether, I now commanded nearly 70,000 soldiers. Unlike Niu Fu's army, these were true battle-hardened veterans. Looking toward Jiashu, I asked, "Wenhe, what about supplies?" He smiled confidently. "My lord, the first potato harvest has been completed. There's enough food to sustain an army of 100,000 for an entire year. The 3,000 war horses from Sunjian have also arrived. Our troops are well fed, fully equipped, and eager for battle. This is the perfect time to march." Slamming my hand onto the table, I stood up. "Pass down my orders. Chen Qingji will remain behind with 10,000 Wei infantry and 5,000 garrison troops to defend Pingqiu. Everyone else marches with me. Our destination, Hulao Pass." Every commander answered in unison, "Yes, my lord." 3 days later, 50,000 soldiers marched proudly out of Pingqiu. I rode at the front on my white horse, while Diaochan and Chai Yan accompanied me in an elegant carriage. As I like to say, a true man who conquers the world should never travel without beautiful companions. Sitting inside the carriage, the two women lifted the curtains and looked out at the endless sea of soldiers stretching beyond the horizon, their hearts filled with awe. At the front marched the Iron Pagoda cavalry like iron demons from another world. Behind them rode the disciplined and murderous Snow Dragon riders, followed by the Shenji battalion carrying their black muskets. They knew that wherever this army marched, a storm would surely follow. News of my western campaign spread across the central plains as though it had grown wings. Inside the chancellor's residence in Luoyang, Dongzhuo exploded with rage after hearing the spy's report. "Chen Xuan again!" His furious roar echoed throughout the entire mansion. "He killed my son-in-law, stole my soldiers, and now he dares set his sights on Hulao Pass? Does he think I'm made of clay?" Beside him, Li Ru wiped the sweat from his forehead. Even he hadn't expected my growth to be so terrifying. In such a short time, I had become a warlord commanding tens of thousands of troops. "Feng Xian!" Dongzhuo roared toward the doorway. "Where is Lu Bu?" Lu Bu stepped inside with a dark expression. Ever since his humiliating defeat at Pingqiu, he had spent every day thinking about revenge. Pointing at him, Dongzhuo shouted, "I'm giving you 50,000 elite soldiers, 30,000 Bingzhou Wolf Riders, and 20,000 Shiliang Iron Cavalry. Go to Hulao Pass immediately and tell the defenders to hold it at all costs. If you lose to that former stable servant again," his bloodshot eyes glared at Lu Bu, "then bring me your own head." Kneeling on one knee, Lu Bu answered through clenched teeth, "Chancellor, rest assured, if I fail to cut off Chen Xuan's head this time, I swear I'm not worthy of calling myself a man." Without another word, he turned and strode out. Meanwhile, chaos also erupted inside the coalition camp outside Hulao Pass. "What? Chen Xuan is marching this way with 50,000 soldiers?" Yuan Shao shot to his feet in disbelief. What is he trying to do? Didn't he already accept Dongzhuo's appointment? Is he coming to help Dongzhuo fight us? Yuan Shu shrieked from the side, while the other warlords immediately broke into heated discussion, none of them able to guess what my true intentions were. For a moment, fear spread through everyone like wildfire. Only Cao Cao sat quietly in the corner, his head lowered as if lost in thought, but the tightly clenched fists at his sides revealed the storm raging inside him. He knew the real show was only just beginning. The stable slave named Chen Xuan was destined to become the biggest variable in this entire game. Inside Yuan Shao's command tent, the arguments had become as loud and chaotic as a crowded marketplace. A minor lord with a pointed goatee anxiously stepped forward and said, "Alliance leader, this Chen Xuan has come with bad intentions. We have to prepare ourselves before it's too late." Yuan Shu immediately flicked his sleeve and replied with obvious sarcasm, "Prepare? And how exactly are we supposed to prepare? That man defeated Liu Bu himself, and he commands those demon soldiers who can summon thunder. What do we have that can stop someone like that?" Yuan Shao shot Yuan Shu a cold glare and snapped, "Gonglu, stop talking nonsense and shaking the morale of our army." Yet inside, Yuan Shao was more frustrated than anyone. He had trapped himself in a situation with no easy way out. In order to win Chen Xuan over earlier, he had personally appointed him as the vanguard general of the anti-Dongzhuo alliance under the authority of the alliance leader. But now that very vanguard had arrived with an army of 50,000 troops without even informing him beforehand. It was a clear message that Chen Xuan simply did not respect him at all. Fighting him was an enormous gamble. Although Yuan Shao possessed a larger army, it was only a patchwork force gathered from the various warlords, each with different ambitions and little unity. If they truly clashed against Chen Xuan's elite soldiers, the outcome would be impossible to predict. But if he chose not to fight, where would that leave his dignity as alliance leader? How could he expect to command all the other lords afterward? At that moment, the strategist Feng Ji stepped closer and said, Alliance leader, in my opinion, we should first send someone to test Chen Xuan's intentions. Let's find out whether he has come as a friend or an enemy. If he truly intends to help us defeat Dong Chuo, then we can make use of his military strength. A ruthless glint flashed across Feng Ji's eyes before he continued. But if he's here to cause trouble, then we'll unite all the allied lords and eliminate this dangerous threat before he becomes an even bigger problem. Yuan Shao considered the proposal for a moment and finally nodded. Good. We'll do exactly that. But who should we send? Everyone looked at one another, yet not a single person volunteered. Visit Chen Xuan? It sounded like a joke. That man was a merciless demon who killed without blinking an eye. He had even dared to execute Dong Chuo's own son-in-law. If the envoy offended him even slightly, who knew whether Chen Xuan would simply cut him down on the spot? Just as the tent fell into an uneasy silence, Cao Cao, who had remained quiet the entire time, slowly rose to his feet and said, "Alliance leader, why not allow me to make the trip?" Every pair of eyes instantly turned toward him. Yuan Shao looked genuinely surprised. Cao Cao smiled calmly and explained, "Back in Luoyang, I had the chance to meet Chen Xuan once. Since we already have that small acquaintance, this is the perfect opportunity for me to learn more about his true intentions. Alliance leader, rest assured, I know exactly how to handle this." Yuan Shao stared at Cao Cao, unable to shake the feeling that this man was hiding far deeper schemes than he ever revealed. He had no idea what Cao Cao was really planning, but with no better candidate available, he could only nod in agreement. "Very well, then I'll leave this matter to you, Mengde." After accepting the order, Cao Cao turned around and calmly walked out of the command tent.